All right. Thank you, everyone, for so patiently waiting an extra week for this one. It's going to be 2 weeks of content, so a bit longer than usual. So just bear with me, but I'll try to go as fast as I can and see if you can keep up. All right. What's happening in Chicago the last 2 weeks? Well, I got to be honest, not a good few weeks in Chicago economic news. We'll start off with economics and development. The Chicago metro area, it turned out, was ranked number one in inflation this past year, number one in the whole country. And this inflation outpaced wage growth by 8%. I'd say start stocking up on eggs, but they go bad, unfortunately. So in all seriousness, this is likely mostly driven by housing inflation. And with only a few hundred units slated to come online in the downtown area this year, so not much more additional supply, renters like ourselves are likely in for another high inflation year. Citadel, the hedge fund titan, is finally and fully leaving its namesake Chicago Tower altogether. After moving to its new headquarters in Miami during the pandemic. At the same time, the New York Stock Exchange, which owns the Chicago Stock Exchange, announced that it is moving what is left of the Chicago Stock Exchange, which is not much, to Dallas. The impact of these moves are mostly symbolic at this point, but the symbolism is fairly bleak. Chicago, with a continually shrinking financial sector, will mean a poorer city for everyone. At the same time, United Airlines, which is one of the most prominent and largest employers in Chicago, was reported to be considering relocating its headquarters from Chicago to Denver amidst a planned expansion at Denver. It remains to be seen what this will mean for the massive O'Hare redevelopment plan that is currently underway, which United has a lot of leverage over. It's not a done deal, but it could happen. So we'll keep an eye on that. The University of Notre Dame, it was reported, agreed to hand over a building that it owns on the Mag Mile in the Loop for free to its lender. Pretty ominous sign for the downtown commercial real estate market, and likely indicating that we haven't hit bottom yet in the post-pandemic fallout, real estate fallout, mostly commercial real estate fallout. In contrast, some good news: the Gap, the retailer, is likely reopening its store on the Mag Mile since it closed it during the pandemic in 2020. It's good news, especially given that the vacancy rate in the Loop is twice what it was still pre-pandemic. The mayor pushed through the $830 million bond, meaning pile of debt, that he had floated a month or so ago. If you remember that, it was literally the day after the city's debt got downgraded because of the fiscal situation that we're in and the apparent lack of seriousness with which the mayor approaches that situation, at least according to the ratings agencies. So that idea that it was reported about a month ago has now come to pass. They got it through with various aldermen, including our own here in West Loop and the Loop, launching op-eds about it in the newspaper, against it in the newspapers. All right, so that's econ. How about politics? Trump's attorney general has ordered the Department of Justice to pause all federal funding for sanctuary cities. This will be shot down in the courts, as it was the first time he tried it in his first time. But the DOJ is also suing the state and the city over its sanctuary city policies, and who knows where that'll end up. Mayor Johnson this week did accept the House's request for him to testify about Chicago's sanctuary city status, so we will see him in the public, in the national spotlight soon. After the mayor made waves earlier this week by publicly taking a Trumpian tone and declaring, I quote, "If you ain't with us, you just gotta go. I'll be making some decisions in the days to come, ... Just 3 days after that, there were even bigger waves when 4 very high-profile, high-level directors in his administration resigned, which means they were likely pushed out by the mayor or purged, as the headlines put it. Including the head of the Department of Aviation, which oversees the airports, the Office of Emergency Management and Communications, the Civilian Office of Police Accountability, that one kind of makes sense, and the mayor's chief strategist. The first 2 of those were pretty head-scratching. They're not political at all positions, and they were pretty well-regarded people, and looked like most of the aldermen supported them, so kind of head-scratching. One of the mayor's signature campaign promises, city-owned grocery stores in food deserts, especially on the south and west sides of the city, has this week been significantly scaled down in ambition. The plan is now to have just a single city-owned market, not a grocery store, a market where local vendors can sell things if they want, as opposed to a store. Another one of his signature campaign promises was to nix the Shot Spotter program. Goose can probably weigh on this a lot better than I can, but the city this week, or maybe last week, released an RFP for looking for a service to replace that old one, that old Shot Spotter service, which is basically just microphones placed on sticks throughout the city, listening for gunshots. When it hears one, it notifies the police and first responders to quickly respond to try to save people as fast as possible. One of the mayor's key campaign promises was to ban it. It was never really clear why. The evidence, to be fair, is pretty shaky on its efficacy, on it actually working, but you really have to tie yourself into a pretzel to come up with an explanation for why it could be actively harmful. Anyways, he said he'd ban it. And then when its contract was going to expire, he actually reneged on that promise last summer for something like 6 or 9 months because he didn't want to nix it around the time of the Democratic National Convention, probably because he wanted to avoid any challenging headlines or bad press around the time of the DNC. You can imagine if someone got shot and he had just shut down that program, it wouldn't look good. So that pissed off his base really, really significantly back then. Fast forward to now, for whatever reason, now he's looking to restart the program. So he's pissing off his base off again, while also pissing off more crime-focused voters because who are pissed off that he let the contract expire in the first place. So kind of as always, some truly head-scratching political instincts from the mayor. This week, the chairwoman of the mayor's campaign fund stepped down just a few weeks after he was, if you remember, in hot water for failing to appropriately track and declare gifts that he got from lobbyists and so on. He also tried to make amends on that whole issue by releasing a video of the so-called gift room that you can watch. You can see it. There's a little video of the gifts in the room if you're so inclined. Michael Madigan, the former Speaker of the Illinois House, was finally found guilty. He'll be going to jail for a long time. And this was in the same week that Trump pardoned Blagojevich, the old governor, who equally corrupt Illinois politician. But he's going to be fine. He'll probably make a bunch of money writing books and so on. So if Madigan gets in Trump's good graces too, maybe we'll see him out. Who knows? The city was considering settling for $1.2 million with the family of a Dexter Reed, a man that Chicago police shot, before the potential settlement became extremely controversial when it was reported that the man had, in fact, also shot the police. Relatedly, an analysis came out this week that indicated that Chicago paid out over $107 million in police misconduct settlements and verdicts in 2024, which was way above the $74 million it had paid out in 2023. Moving on to education news, in CPS CTU negotiation news, if you recall from a few weeks ago, an independent third party was supposed to come in and review the contract terms and what CTU was asking for and issue an opinion on the reasonableness of that. They ended up releasing that report, and basically both sides declared victory. So it doesn't seem like it changed the picture much. It doesn't seem like they're much closer to a deal. They're kind of where they were before. But it also doesn't seem like CTU is much closer to a strike. CTU's bargaining position was, however, weakened probably quite a bit when I think it was this past weekend or late last week, the Service Employees International Union, or SEIU, released a press statement basically just absolutely blasting the CTU for endangering the SEIU jobs. I don't know the details, but it seems like it's a fight over basically special education jobs. Both the SEIU and the CTU were the mayor's biggest backers and helped him get him elected. And so they're now duking it out in the open. That's an interesting new dynamic in both the CTU contract negotiation and in the next election cycle. At the same time, the CPS CEO, Pedro Martinez, who is sort of in no man's land, he is apparently in the running for superintendent of Clark County, Nevada, which is the 5th biggest school district in the country. That's all I got for education. In transportation news, New York City continues to have good news come out of its congestion pricing program, with subway Crime down 36% since starting, and traffic fatalities down 44%. Those are pretty huge numbers. Some of it may be just due to fewer people in the area, but it seems like a pretty resounding success. And this is relevant for Chicago because aldermen in Chicago have been looking at this and have been openly talking about potentially trying the same thing here in the Loop and River North and West Loop. In construction news, the final wall of a Chicago Tribune building came down last week, which paves the way for the eventual Bally's Casino and Hotel on the river if they can come up with the rest of the money. In sports news, the Bulls traded away star Zach LaVine. You may have heard the matriarch of the family that owns the Bears died at a ripe old age of 102. You may have heard of that as well. Representative Morgan in the Illinois House introduced legislation to require any professional sports team to achieve a 500 or greater record in at least 3 out of the past 5 regular seasons to be eligible for public funding, which is an obvious shot at the Bears trying to get funding for their stadium. They suck, so they're not gonna, they can't clear that anytime soon if it does pass. I don't actually know if it's going to pass though. And then lastly, a study found that Bears fans are the most heartbroken franchise, at least at the moment, in the NFL. That's probably not news to some folks listening. In 2027 mayoral election news, let's take a look at our Susana Mendoza watch. This week, she took a shot at the CTU for misspelling a word in a tweet. She took a shot at the mayor for the multiple high-profile resignations that we saw this week and gratuitously praised the people who resigned. She also conspicuously thanked United Airlines amidst all the news of them potentially leaving for everything they've done for the city in a pretty transparent attempt to curry favor with them and keep them in the city. She also took a shot at the city for considering paying out that settlement to Dexter Reed. And then she took the side of the SEIU in its fight against the CTU in that intra-union fight. Lastly, in just random news, a bill was proposed in the state legislature to allow 18 to 20-year-olds to drink legally in Illinois if a parent or guardian is present. They're calling it the Drink Wisconsinably bill because it's based off of what is already true in Wisconsin. So you can turn it off now if you want to avoid a story that's really not that important, but it was just a truly ridiculous kerfuffle in City Hall among the aldermen. So go ahead and shut it off if you're good. This one takes a bit of setup to get to the punchline. A few weeks ago, there was a bit of controversy around a city-funded art exhibit which housed some pro-Palestinian, anti-U.S., anti-Israel art. The debate centered over whether it was okay for the city to go beyond, just protecting free speech versus actively funding certain speech that some viewed as hate speech. This was, a tiny little thing. It's just a little art exhibit that I didn't see fit to include in the news of the week, so I passed over it. But fast forward a week, and there was I'll call it a verbal altercation in City Hall about this between one alderman, Byron Sigcho Lopez, who's a firebrand far-left alderman, and our own alderman here in the Loop and West Loop. Between the two of them, the city council was in the middle of debating a vote about shutting the art exhibit down or not, when Alderman Sigcho Lopez just outright lost his shit, called our alderman a white supremacist, was kicked out of the council chambers. He later apologized to our alderman, then our alderman went to reporters and effectively forgave him publicly. But this all, of course, generated a bunch of press and headlines and drama. So what did the mayor's administration do? They chose to take down the public video of this whole kerfuffle, which is required by law to be publicly accessible, which of course caused another firestorm and more interest in the video itself, and they had to put it back up, of course. So anyways, you can now go ahead and Google it and see what the people who represent us are doing over some unimportant little thing. And that is the state of Chicago. I'll see you all next week.